This is the Meteor75 Pro with the DJI O4 on board. It's an HD tiny whoop with huge 45mm props that runs on a lightweight 1S power system. It's efficient for long flight times, it doesn't make a lot of noise, so you can fly just about anywhere, and those 1S batteries are cheap and easy to charge. I did just review the analog version of the Meteor75 Pro on the channel, and there are a lot of similarities, but this isn't the same drone with the DJI O4 strapped to it. The all-in-one board and the camera mounting system have been completely redesigned to take full advantage of the DJI O4. And the DJI O4 is a huge improvement over any other VTX camera combo that's light enough to fit on a tiny whoop. 4K 60 gyro stabilized video, crystal clear FPV feed, and great range and penetration on a 1S tiny whoop. This is not a sponsored video. BetaFPV did not send me this drone for review. I chose to purchase this drone because for me, a 1S tiny whoop with 75mm props is a great platform for testing what that DJI O4 Lite is capable of. I'll give you guys a real close look at this drone. I'll show you some flight footage, and we'll talk about why you might or might not want to consider the Meteor75 Pro over some of the other options that are out there, like the 2S Pavo Femto. The canopy and the camera mount have been designed specifically for the DJI O4 Air Unit. I picked up an extra canopy, so that's why I have another one that's unassembled. If you get your drone without a DJI O4, you'll get these pieces and you'll need to put your canopy together. It's a pretty simple process, and I actually just did the same thing to turn my Pavo Pico into a Pavo Femto. Basically, you have a bracket made up of two pieces. This piece clips onto the camera, this piece screws into the plastic canopy of the drone, and they're held together with these 4 rubber grommets or fasteners. The mount does a great job of isolating the camera from vibrations, and as you can see, it has a lot of play and it's really soft. This is very important because the DJI O4 is sensitive to vibrations, so without a soft mounting solution like this, you would get jello in your footage and stabilization wouldn't work properly. If anything, it's too soft because I did get a small amount of jello in my footage. The drone comes with Betaflight 4.5.1 and the ESC firmware is Bluejay 96 kHz. This is how the drone came from the factory, and so this is how I tested it. If you have issues with jello in your footage, you might try to change the ESC firmware to 48 kHz. I don't really use a tiny whoop for cinematic shots because they aren't all that stable and they get blown around in the wind a lot, but you can certainly get some usable footage out of this DJI O4 system, and since this is a tiny whoop, it can go places that larger drones can't. Rocksteady works pretty well to stabilize your footage, and you can get some nice, stable videos that you can pull right from the drone. You can also run your footage through GyroFlow, which will give you much better and much more usable results, and that's what I use most of the time when I want to share my videos online. To get the best results in GyroFlow, set your aspect ratio to 4:3, which I do anyway. Then set the field of view to wide, then turn off Rocksteady or in-camera stabilization. You can adjust your camera angle with these screws on the side of the canopy, but since the mount is designed to be very soft, you need to be careful you're moving the actual bracket and not just stretching the rubbers. The drone weighs in at 37.1 grams, and with a BetaFPV 550 mAh 1S battery, it weighs 51.6 grams. Now you could also fly this drone on lighter weight batteries like a 300 milliamp or a 450 milliamp, but I prefer the 550 for longer flight times. The recommended 550 1S batteries fit the tray perfectly, and of course they have the same BT 2.0 connector. Remember, this drone does not come with any batteries, so make sure to pick up some batteries when you get your drone. I recommend you pick up a set of BetaFPV's 1S 550 batteries because they do fit the drone perfectly. And if you don't already have a 1S charger, I highly recommend you pick up one of these Vifly 6-channel chargers. If you fly whoops, it makes your life so much easier because you can charge up 6 batteries at a time at home or in the field, and when you're done flying, you can put them in storage voltage, which will make your batteries last longer. This drone is built around BetaFPV's new Matrix 3-in-1 board. It's called a 3-in-1 board because it combines the flight controller, a 12 amp ESC, and a serial ELRS receiver on the same circuit board. If you're new to FPV, the advantage of a serial ELRS receiver is that you can update the ELRS software on the receiver without having to update the entire flight controller, so it works like an external receiver even though it's built into the board. That's a good thing. This little red wire is the ELRS antenna. I do wish it were placed in a more optimized location, or I might even want a slightly larger antenna, but it's clear that BetaFPV has prioritized keeping the weight down as far as possible. Even with this tiny antenna, ELRS works great and we still get plenty of range for tiny whoop style flying. Don't forget that even though the DJI O4 is a leap forward in video reception, the receiver range is the same. With the DJI O4, I was tempted to just keep flying. It's not like an analog whoop where your video breaks up as you get further away, but you do want to be respectful of your receiver limitations. You don't want to fail safe over water or somewhere inconvenient. The all-in-one board has been designed specifically for the DJI O4 Air Unit, and it does have a 6-pin DJI plug down here. The board also has a 5-volt, 3-amp BEC, or battery eliminator circuit, which is designed to power the DJI O4, which requires a certain level of voltage in order to operate, and that BEC is what allows the DJI O4 to run on a 1S power system without the risk of brownouts at the end of your flight when your battery voltage gets low. I was a little bit worried about brownouts at low voltage on this 1S power system, but I never had a problem, even when I flew my batteries down lower than I normally would as a test. In my experience, there are no issues with the DJI O4 Lite browning out on this 1S power system. The quad does require this USB dongle in order to connect to BetaFlight, so make sure you keep this dongle in a safe place. I would prefer a standard USB plug on the board so I don't have to worry about losing this special cable, but they've crammed so much tech onto such a tiny circuit board that I think dealing with this little dongle is a price I'm willing to pay. The board does have motor plugs, which means if you ever burn out a motor, you can swap out or replace a motor without having to do any microscopic soldering. Also, there is a free UART. UART 2 is available if you needed another UART for any reason. The motors are 1102, 22,000 kV, which are the same as the analog version of the Meteor75 Pro, and they strike a good balance between power and efficiency. The props are the Gemfan 45mm tri-bladed props, which are larger than what we usually see on a 1S Tiny Whoop. This quad has a wheelbase of just over 80mm motor post to motor post, making it one of the largest 1S Tiny Whoops on the market. The prop size is really the selling point of this drone over some of the other DJI O4 Tiny Whoops like the Meteor75 Pro, because with these larger props, you get better efficiency, longer flights, and the drone is more stable in the air and easier to fly. This drone does have a few limitations, and there are a few things you should keep in mind. First of all, the field of view of the DJI O4 Lite is about 117, 118 degrees, which is much narrower than other systems that I'm used to. It does help to fly in 4:3 aspect ratio because you can see a little bit more at the top and bottom of your screen. But honestly, that limited field of view didn't bother me with the type of flying that I like to do. After a few packs, I just got used to it and I completely forgot about it. However, I do really notice it the first time I fly this drone, or when I would come from my other quads with a wider field of view and then go back to this one. For example, the analog version of the Meteor75 Pro comes with BetaFPV's CO3 camera, which has a 160-degree field of view. And sometimes that's the difference between seeing things or not in your peripheral vision. If you're a racer, or if you want ultimate control, analog is going to have an advantage when it comes to field of view. Another thing to keep in mind is that with the DJI O4 on board, this quad is about 7 grams heavier than the analog version, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a big difference on a tiny whoop. And of course, the analog version is cheaper and does come with 2 batteries and a charger. If you want to learn more about the analog Meteor75 Pro, I have a link to my review in the video description. If you want a tiny whoop or micro drone with the DJI O4 system that can rip around and fly freestyle, you might want to consider the Pavo Femto, which has the same 1102 motors, but they're 14,000 kV instead of 22,000 kV to run on 2S batteries. And with that 2S power system, it's a little heavier. It does have slightly smaller 40mm props instead of these 45mm props, but it really rips around and it's much more capable for freestyle. This drone is actually a Pavo Pico, which has been updated with the Femto canopy in the DJI O4 system. That means it has 45mm props, just like the Meteor75 Pro. I will be reviewing a stock Pavo Femto on my channel, so please do subscribe so you don't miss that video. If you're mostly interested in indoor flying, you might want to consider the Meteor75 Pro. It has smaller 0802 motors, it has smaller 35mm props, and it does take a smaller 300 mAh 1S batteries, which means shorter flight times. But that smaller form factor will be much more nimble and better suited for indoor flying if that's what you're after. Overall, I think this drone flies great for what it is. It's a super fun park flyer that you can take with you anywhere, and it's easy to fly, so it's great for beginners. This is probably the most non-intimidating DJI FPV drone on the market, and flying the Meteor75 Pro reminds me of how much fun FPV is when you keep things simple. If you're realistic about the compromises that have been made in order to create a digital tiny whoop at this weight and price point, I think you're going to love flying the Meteor75 Pro with the DJI O4 system. If you consider the cost of this drone with the DJI O4 pre-installed and the N3 goggles, you can get into digital FPV today at about half the cost of what it would have been just a year or two ago. If you are interested in picking up this drone or the Meteor75 Pro or the Pavo Femto or anything else we talked about, please use the links below because it supports my channel and it really helps me out. All right, you guys, that'll do it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one.